Hi, it's Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. So today I am participating in the Creative Arts Collaboration Gift Exchange hashtag event, and I'm making a mixed media canvas board, and this canvas board will be making its way to Diana from Artfully Yours with Diana. So I'm going to start by applying some black gesso, making sure that I cover the edges of the board as well. I was just going to paint around the very edge, but then decided just to go over it completely because that will give a good foundation for what I'm about to do next. And that is that I'm going to stick down some paper. Now I want this to have a very rough look. What I'm trying to do is something that has a kind of shabby chic look. So I'm just making this out to the kind of size that I want this. I don't want to fill the whole panel, so I'm just getting this to a size that I feel is appropriate. That edge there is a bit too neat looking for me, so just starting to rough it up a little bit. Now what I'm going to do in some instances is to roll down those kind of thin papery edges. I just want to have that kind of rolled paper effect. But before I stick this whole sheet down, I'm just going to go very quickly around the edges with some distress ink. It doesn't matter at this stage if there's still some white pieces because there is some other media to go onto this, and that will start to hide the white edges. So I'm using some extra heavy gel matte medium because I really want this first piece to be stuck very well in place. And just putting some on the back of the piece of paper as well, just to give extra adhesion. And I'm just kind of centering that onto the canvas panel. And you see there that I'm just going round and just flicking up those little edges of paper that I want just to have that slightly rough effect. And just putting that piece underneath it so that you can see better. So I'm now looking through some pieces of other papers, some that I've used before, some of these little remnants, just ideal for this kind of size of board that I'm working with. So just starting to choose some of those that I want to use and to pull them into slightly smaller pieces. Now I like this particular piece with Paris and the Eiffel Tower on it because I know that Diana spent some time in France. And whilst I'm not trying to make this an entirely Paris themed piece, I do just want it to have that kind of effect, and I think it's something that she'll like. So at this stage, just looking at various pieces of paper and really just trying to get them to a size that I think is in proportion with the overall size of the piece that I'm creating. But you'll see that as I go along, I do adjust them further. And this is just a piece of tissue paper that I had over from another project. Most of the papers, though not all, are actually Tim Holtz. At this point my clock is upside down, but fortunately I do notice that before I actually stick it down. So now that I know roughly where I want things, I'm going to use my Mod Podge to start sticking down the next layers. So as is generally the case when I'm creating pieces like this, I know roughly where I want some pieces to go, but sometimes it's only when you start to put them down onto the canvas or onto the page that you start to, you look at the overall balance and you start to think about where things might be best placed. But really there's no right or wrong, it's whatever you feel is best and whatever you feel you're happiest with. And here I'd noticed that most of that pink paper that I'd already put down was mainly covered, so I just wanted to bring out another little bit of it. And just making sure that I now have the clock fully in place. And I'm going over it at this stage with a generous coat of Mod Podge. And I'm just going to lay some washi tape into it as well, just to give added interest. Whilst washi tape is sticky, sometimes you do need to add some glue to it to make sure that it does stick down fully. Now, while the glue is still wet, I'm actually just going to spray some distress paint on top of this. And because the glue is still wet, the distress ink will actually it will make it a bit more fast. Distress ink does have a tendency to rub off unless it's kind of treated with something, but the glue does help keep it in place. But I am taking off excess there because I don't want everything covered up. So I want to start to introduce a bit of a different colour, but what I want to do is to create more of a kind of wash effect. So I'm just mixing some acrylic medium in with that craft paint just to make it a bit thinner. And really, until I start applying it to the page, I'm not going to know if this is the right kind of consistency or not, if I've got the right mix. But I'm fairly happy with that. Once I get an initial layer on, I do then thin it down a bit further, just to spread it further across the page. And again, I think this is just helping to give it that kind of vintage, shabby chic look. It's not too bright on there, but it does start to enhance, or at least I think it starts to enhance the whole piece. So this is an Andy Skinner stencil by Deco Art. It's French themed, and what I'm looking to do here is to just add a couple of pieces into the background. I don't want them to stand out too much, but I want them to be there. So I'm using the gold, and you'll see that once this is on, it actually fades quite well into the background. Or blends quite well into the background, I should say. I just want it there enough that if you were looking closely it would be seen. And I'm not quite sure what they call that little pattern, but again, just want it there so that it can be seen when looked at, if you were looking at the page closely. And giving that a quick dry. Now I decide to take my Stabilo all here, and I'm just going to work some of it in around the items that I've stenciled. I'm not entirely certain at this stage if I am looking for it to stand out a bit more, but I decide to use the Stabilo because I know that if I don't like it, then I can simply use some water to take it away virtually completely. So I decide to leave that more or less as is for the time being, but what I then do is to take the Stabilo all and start to work it along some of the edges of the papers that I've stuck down. Although I've worked to kind of blend those into the background, I do want to add a bit of depth and interest just by outlining some of the edges. And then once I've done that, I'll take a small brush and some water just to blend out those lines a little bit. And that's the good thing about the Stabilo. You can almost leave it as bold as you want it to be, or you can start to work it in a bit more so it creates more of a shadow effect rather than that kind of hard line effect. And you'll see that I work away at it for a while until I get it to just to the way that I think it looks best on the page. And again, there's no right or wrong with this type of thing. A lot of it's just down to personal preference. So I decided I don't want a hard line around Paris or this other little emblem. So what I do is I just take the paintbrush with some water and I start to watered down the stabilo where it's been, and I like the effect that this creates. It does grip some of the paint a bit, so you do see a slight edge on it, but equally it's not giving it a hard outline so that it stands out. And again, just applying a bit more water there and giving it a little bit of a drippage effect. And another quick dry at this stage. So I now want to introduce a bit more colour, so I'm using some of the twinkling H2Os. This one is Mystique, which is a kind of blue-green colour, turquoise probably. Just applying little bits to begin with until I see how it's starting to look and whether or not I like it on there. And I do, and so I start to apply a bit more. Now using the raspberry wine, and again, because it's fairly well watered down, it's not going to go on thick, it will go on transparent. So anything that's below it will still be seen, but it just starts to build up and to give a nice effect. And again, just allowing a bit of drippage there. And now taking the Spanish moss, which is a green colour. It's quite subtle, but again it just helps add a certain something to the piece. And at this point I'm really happy with the way that all the colours are starting to work together. So all I'm doing now is to take a baby wipe to try and wipe off some of the glue that was kind of around the edges and some of the drippage that had gone down and marked black. I couldn't quite decide if I wanted it to stay black or not, so you'll see what I do next. So I decided to take some of this distress ink and just with a baby wipe that's still a little bit damp, I just go round the edges. But after doing that, I decide I'm not entirely happy with it, so I apply some more black gesso. And I'm just trying to carefully go round there without going over the edges of the paper that's there. I don't want to spoil those kind of distressed edges. So just being very gentle as I get close to them. But what this does is it goes over any bits of the glue that was showing, any of the effects of the drippage that had actually gone down and onto the black. But I liked the black because I felt it just kind of set off the piece itself. I think the rest stood out nice against the black. And then a final dry, and that's it. So I'm really pleased with the way it came together. I do hope that Diana from Artfully Yours with Diana likes this, and this will now be winging its way to her. So if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, and please do be sure to check out the other artists participating in this CAC event. There is a link both above with the iCard and also below in the description box. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.